Hey guys, Scott Reekers here with Eastmans, and today I want to review the Soldotna knife from Columbia River Knives and Tools. But I want to start with a question, and it's a fairly important question to me because wild game is cut in the field and then it is prepared in the kitchen. But can your knife hack it in both places? And that's a question that I want to know because I cook a lot around a campfire. So let's see if this knife is going to work for cutting up two of my favorite pieces of meat that I'll use at the campfire or at home. So to start, I want to talk a little bit about why this knife is special. This knife is special because it is celebrating Columbia River's Knives and Tools 30 years in business. Now, anyone who's ever been an entrepreneur or a business person knows that making it 30 years, that's a milestone. And to celebrate that, the owner of Columbia River Knives and Tools got together with his friend Russ Kommer, and they'd fished together for years and they'd done all kinds of outdoor activities. And Russ had been a guide in Alaska multiple years and spent a lot of time hunting and fishing. And during that time, these knives that he made were tools, they were staples of what he did and what he used. And so he designed this knife to celebrate the 30 years in business. It is reminiscent of the knife that Russ and Rod used when they were first running around in Alaska and when they would take trips together and work together. And so this knife is a throwback, it's a hat tip back to that knife. And I think that's really cool because I'm a fan of nostalgia. And what I mean by that is I like a fixed blade knife because I have memories as a kid running around in the mountains of Wyoming with my fixed blade knife attached to the belt on my hip. So let's go back to the original question. Will this knife work in a kitchen, both at home, like kind of what we're doing, or prepping out in the field? So I'm gonna tell you what I've got here. I've got some antelope sausage from last year's hunt. A lot of times when I'm camping with the family, we bring these along and we bring them frozen so that you can still cut them up because they're easy to cut into chunks while they're frozen, and then you can just make easy sausage. So that's what I'm gonna do. Next piece that we're gonna do is I've got some deer chops from my whitetail that I killed this past year. In fact, if you haven't watched that video, be watching it. It has come out on Eastmans Hunting TV and be watching for it on YouTube soon. But we're gonna cut this up, and I'm gonna cut a few different examples. We can cut this up into the typical, backstrap steaks. Those are both recipes and things that I can take out to the field, and I can cook those over a campfire if I want. But I want to give you guys that example because you want a knife that is going to function as a tool. Columbia River Knives and Tools says that. A knife is a tool. Yes, they make hatchets, they make axes. However, a knife is also a tool. It is a tool of survival. And if you have a good knife with you when you are out, no matter where it is, I always have a knife in my pocket. If you have a knife with you, there is always hope that you are going to be able to make a bad situation better, because the knife is, in my mind, one of the #1 tools that you always want to have with you. And so with that said, we're going to get to what does it look like to actually start cutting this up. Now, one other thing I want to note is I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to trim up a little bit of the silver skin too, just to show you that. Now, bear in mind, this is for an example of what it can do in the field. Silver skin is something that you typically take off at home, but you can use this knife to do that. So let's get right to it. Okay, look at how that cuts right through that. That's a little bit that got left on there from the butcher. So that's a little hard to do when I'm trying to make sure I give a good camera angle. You can see I'm cutting some of that off. This is just like around a campfire. I'd trim all this, but I wouldn't necessarily have my, big fillet knife as well. But this is just something to consider. Makes it taste just a little bit better, not as chewy. Okay, one of the things that you have with silver skin too is people will say that that's where a lot of the gamey flavor is. We have some friends that don't hunt as much, and so them being able to see that, okay, this piece of meat doesn't have all that gamey flavor, that makes a big deal too. All right, so next step here, I'm gonna show the typical backstrap cut that I do out of something like this. All right, so notice how I'm holding the knife here. This knife fits in my hand really well, but you don't hold a knife like this. There's a lot of flex and you want to put it right here for different cuts. I'll hold a knife like this a lot, and this fills back into the palm, fills in real nice and holds tight. That's a big piece of the equation. So I'm gonna come here I can really feel how sharp it is. With a knife, you should be able to feel how sharp it is when you're cutting through. Now you can see I'm doing about a 1/2 inch cut on these backstrap medallions. That works really well, I've found. And so you can see obviously that these are a little frozen yet, but it's actually easier to cut up some of these when they're frozen. But if you have a dull knife or a knife that won't hold its blade, that's not gonna work great. So this blade, obviously, I mean, check that out. When you're at your home kitchen, you're able to use, say a big knife, but when you're camping, a knife like this is gonna work just fine, especially when you're tent camping and you wanna be able to use as few tools as possible. This is the case, because I don't like hauling an extra kitchen with me, but if I can use this, that's gonna work better. I'm gonna be happy with it. Plus, I'm just naturally gonna reach for it because this has a belt holster. That belt holster is easy to reach for. So, I'm gonna cut here a little bit again. I'm gonna finish out the job because, we wanna move on to the breakfast sausage. So you can see I'm doing these medallions. A good knife that's made of the strong metal, that's got the Cerakote as well, can hold an edge. You're gonna be able to pass that down to your family. And I'd expect that from a $200 knife. This is a $200 blade, by the way. And so when you're thinking about why would I spend that kind of money on a blade, this is something that's a tool that you're going to be able to use, create memories around, and then continue to use it for generations. So do I think this 3.5 inch blade could cut through an elk backstrap? Absolutely. In fact, I would actually like it when you think about in the field, getting in there right along an elk's backstrap. I start at the top, make that first cut, and then I'll peel all the way down, especially if I can get the gravity to work with me. That works really well. Any blade that's longer than 3.5 inches tends to start getting into a place where I'm not controlling where the tip of it is, and I can't get it, I'm getting close to actually to where my fingers are. So you don't want too big of a knife actually in that situation. That's my preference. I know somebody in the YouTube comments. In fact, if you think using a Bowie knife is better for cutting backstraps out, be my guest to tell why in the YouTube comments. I would love to hear that. But I really like a 3 inch to 3.5 inch for that particular circumstance. And I don't like having to change knives out. So a knife that's built like this is going to be very nice for moving all the way from, if you're somebody who guts your animals, all the way to breaking it down. Personally, I never gut anymore. I do the gutless method, which we've got lots of videos on. You can see that. I'd also have no problem in the gutless method removing the tenderloins, because tenderloins, even in an elk, they're going to be about like this, and so not a big piece of meat, but a precision blade like this would work really well. All right, so I'm gonna show you guys what I do for breakfast sausage. Now, this is nothing crazy. I'm sure a lot of you do something similar. I would love to hear about your favorite family recipes for sausage around the campfire or at home. We've got a tradition at home, and I like to do this, especially during hunting season when the kids are seeing the animals come home, where we cook the breakfast sausage on a Saturday morning. Do you guys have any cooking family traditions that involve hunting? And also, do you have any family heirloom knives? That'd be kind of cool to talk about on YouTube comments. So here we go. I always cut this off just because I don't like to fight with it. But this isn't frozen solid, so I'll go right here. Okay, so I'll unwrap that guy. And this is from my antelope that I shot this last fall. So the first thing that I'll do is I'm gonna cut, look right here, because you can see the bag leaves a little bit oddball shaped, but usually these are pretty little. And this is a little more thought out than I like to do this, because it breaks up a little bit, so the sharpness of the blade isn't as big a factor when you're doing something like sausage. The frozen just makes it a little easier to handle, because obviously it's going to get cooked. I use my knife to tap that down. You don't want any of those hangers there, because that's going to be kind of what burns when you cook the sausage, especially when you're over a fire. If you get a kid hooked on eating it, they will enjoy it forever, and then they will have lots of campfire stories to tell. Campfire stories like what inspired the making of this knife. I can definitely say, now that I'm going through this sausage, that this is a knife that I would be thoroughly comfortable taking anywhere with me. I would love to have this in my pack or on my hip on a backcountry hunt. I'd have no issue taking it with me camping, using it in any circumstance where I would need a sharp knife. The 1095 steel is going to hold its edge. It's a blade that I'm going to trust for a long time into the future. I really like the handle. You can see that It fits your fingers perfectly too. It's very comfortable in your hands. So I've been very happy with the performance of this knife. One of the coolest pieces about this 30th anniversary is they are making 200 Damascus steel knives, and it's going to be made by the Vegas Forge with hand-drilled walnut handle. Now, I play guitar and I love different, when you can see the different grains on an acoustic guitar, and tying that into my love of anything that's finely crafted, you can see that this knife that they're going to have with that walnut handle and the Damascus steel is going to be one pretty knife. They're only making 200 of them. So I would encourage you to take a look and be paying attention to the Columbia River Knives and Tools, their social media, everything that they have going with this 30th anniversary. That's a big deal. So make sure that you're paying attention. Thanks again for watching this review, and I can't wait to bring the Soldotna into the field.